The market was alive with noise, colors, and strange smells. Lights from hundreds of stalls flickered in the smoky air, showing faces of creatures from many worlds. Some had scales, some had fur, and some had more eyes than a human could count. Voices rose and fell like waves, calling out prices, trading goods, and arguing over credits. Among this chaos walked a single human. His name was Ethan. He was not tall, not strong, and not rich, but he carried himself with quiet strength. Loneliness hung on his face like an old shadow. He had traveled for months across unknown stars, searching for something he could not name. He told himself he was looking for work, maybe food, maybe a purpose, but inside he only wanted to feel less alone. Ethan's boots crunched on the dusty metal floor as he moved through the crowd. Alien merchants shouted at him, waving strange fruits, glowing stones, or shiny weapons. He ignored them, for he had little money, only a few small coins left in his pocket. His stomach was empty, and his heart was heavy. Then he heard laughter, cruel and sharp, cutting through the noise. It came from a small corner of the market where fewer people walked. Curious, Ethan turned his head and saw a strange sight. A thin figure sat on a low wooden box, a sack pulled. Over the head, the body was tied with rough rope, arms trembling, legs weak. The figure was small, almost fragile, like a lost child. Around the figure stood a group of aliens, pointing, laughing, and spitting insults. 3 coins, one alien shouted, hitting the sack with his hand. Only 3 coins for this useless thing, he said, and the others laughed harder. Ethan frowned. The alien behind the stall was a fat creature with green skin and 4 short arms. He had sharp teeth and a greedy smile. In front of him, a crooked sign was written in broken human words. Cheap slave. 3 credits. Ethan felt anger rise. In his chest, he did not like slavery and he did not like cruelty. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the figure with the sack. Why so cheap? Ethan asked, his voice calm but cold. The merchant laughed, showing his yellow teeth. Because this one is worthless, he said. Broken, weak, no use for work, no use for pleasure, no power at all. He waved his arms as if throwing away. Garbage, 3 coins human, and you can take it or leave it. Ethan looked again at the figure. The body trembled, and he thought he heard a soft sound, maybe a cry, maybe a whisper. Something inside Ethan's heart moved. He had known what it felt like to be alone, to be unwanted, to be worthless, and now he saw it in front of him. His hand touched his pocket, feeling the last 3 coins. They were all he had, enough to buy a little food, maybe one more night of shelter. But if he walked away, he knew the image of this figure would follow him forever. Without another word, Ethan pulled the coins out and placed them on the stall. The fat merchant's eyes widened in surprise. You buy? He asked, then laughed. You really buy? For only 3 coins, take the trash. He shoved the figure forward, the sack still covering the head. The ropes loosened, and the fragile body almost fell into Ethan's arms. The crowd laughed, some shaking their heads, some whispering about the strange human who wasted his money. But Ethan ignored them. He lifted the figure gently, feeling how light the body was. The sack moved slightly, and he heard a weak breath, a whisper too soft to understand. Ethan walked away from the stall, his steps firm. The laughter of the crowd faded behind him. The lights of the market grew dimmer as he turned into the narrow streets of the space station. The figure in his arms shivered, and Ethan whispered, It's all right. You are safe now. But in his heart, questions screamed louder than the market noise. Who was this figure? Why was the sack never removed? Why only 3 coins? What secret had he just carried into his life? The station's air was heavy with smoke and dust, but Ethan felt a new kind of weight pressing on his shoulders, not just the body of the alien girl, but the weight of fate. Something told him this was no simple purchase. This moment, this choice would change everything. The figure shifted again, weak hands clutching his sleeve. Through the sack came a faint, broken voice. Danger. Coming, Ethan froze, his heart beating fast. He looked around, shadows in the narrow street seemed darker than before. The market noise behind him now sounded far away, almost unreal. And in that silence, Ethan knew one thing. He had just stepped into a story bigger than himself, and there would be no turning back. Ethan carried the girl through the dim corridors of the station. The lights flickered above his head, some broken, some buzzing, making the place feel half alive, half dead. Every step echoed against metal walls, mixing with the low hum of machinery and the faraway voices of merchants. The girl in his arms was light, far too light, as if she had been starved for weeks. Her breathing was shallow, her hands weak, yet she clutched his sleeve as if he was the last thing keeping her alive. Ethan reached the docking bay where his old ship waited. It was small, scratched, and not impressive, but it was his only home. The doors opened with a creak, and he stepped inside. The smell of oil and old metal greeted him. Along with the silence of a place no one else had touched in years, he placed the girl carefully on a chair near the small table. Her body slumped, her head still covered by the dirty sack. Ethan frowned as he looked at her, his chest tightening. He had spent 3 coins on someone he didn't even know. Why did he do it? Was it pity, anger at the merchant, or something else? He couldn't tell. The sack bothered him. It was tied loosely now, hanging over her face like a cruel mask. He hesitated, his hand hovering near it. What would he see when he removed it? A monster? A trap? A mistake he couldn't undo? The girl stirred, her voice weak and muffled. "Please, take it off," she whispered. Ethan pulled the sack away slowly, carefully, as if revealing a dangerous secret. The fabric slid down, and for the first time, her face was shown. Ethan froze, his breath catching. Her skin was pale, but not human pale. It glowed faintly, like moonlight trapped under the surface. Her eyes were large, silver, and shining with an unnatural light. Her hair was white, not from age but from nature, soft and long, falling across her thin shoulders. She was alien, but not ugly, not monstrous. In fact, she looked fragile, almost beautiful. Yet there was something haunting about her, a sadness carved deep into her features. Ethan stared for a long moment, and the girl stared back. Then she lowered her eyes, ashamed. "They cover me because I am different," she whispered. Her voice was soft, shaking, but her words were clear. "Now, they fear me, or they want to use me." Ethan sat across from her, his mind spinning. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady. The girl hesitated, as if afraid to answer. Finally, she spoke. "My name was Lyra." The way she said it made Ethan feel she had not spoken that name in a long time. Lyra lifted her thin hands, showing the bruises on her wrists where the ropes had been. "They sold me," she said quietly. "They said I was weak, worthless. But it is not true." Her silver eyes met his, and for a moment Ethan thought he saw something hidden behind them. A flicker of light, a secret power. Ethan leaned back, uneasy. "What do you mean?" he asked. Lyra opened her mouth to explain, but suddenly her body shook. She pressed her hands to her head, trembling. "Danger. Coming," she whispered again, this time louder, more urgent. Her glowing skin flickered like a light about to break. Ethan stood quickly, scanning the small window of his ship. The station outside seemed calm, but he trusted her fear more than what he saw. He locked the doors, his heart racing. "What danger?" he demanded. Lyra shook her head, her eyes wide. "They will come. They always come. They never let me go." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. This was no ordinary slave, no worthless girl sold for 3 coins. There was something greater, something dangerous about her. But he also felt a strange pull inside, a need to protect her. It was foolish, maybe even deadly, but he couldn't ignore it. Lyra's voice softened, almost breaking. "You should not have bought me, human," she said. "They will come for you now, too." Ethan clenched his fists, his jaw tight. "Then let them come," he said. "I won't give you back." Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes shining with surprise. For the first time, she gave a small, fragile smile. It was weak but real, a spark of light in the darkness of her fear. Outside the ship, the docking bay was no longer silent. Shadows moved across the walls. Heavy footsteps echoed. Unknown figures gathered, searching, hunting. Lyra's warning was already true. Ethan had bought more than a stranger, he had bought a war. But inside the ship, in that small moment, it did not matter. A lonely human had lifted the sack, seen the truth, and made a choice. And that choice would lead him down a path he could never escape. A path that began with fear but might end with something far greater. The ship drifted through the dark of space, leaving the noisy market station behind. Inside, silence filled the small cabin, broken only by the soft hum of engines and Lyra's uneven breathing. Ethan sat across from her, watching her carefully. His mind full of questions, she sat with her silver eyes lowered, her glowing skin dim under the weak lights, as if hiding from the truth she carried. At last, Ethan spoke, his voice steady but curious. "You said your name is Lyra?" he said. "Who are you really? And why were they selling you for 3 coins?" Lyra's hands trembled, clutching the edge of the chair. For a long time she did not answer, her lips pressed tight as though speaking might bring back pain she wanted to forget. Finally, her voice came soft and broken. "I was not always a slave," she whispered. "I was born into a powerful family, a family that ruled one of the star systems far from here." Ethan's eyes narrowed. She did not look like royalty, not now, not with her bruises, her thin body, her broken voice, but there was something in her eyes, a strength, a fire, that made him believe she was not lying. "They called us the Lumerians," Lyra continued, her voice carrying a faint echo as if she was remembering something far away. "My people were touched by light. We could shape it, bend it, protect ourselves with it." Her hands opened slightly and a tiny spark of white glow flickered in her palms before fading away. "But our gift was dangerous," she said softly. "Many wanted it. Many wanted to control us." Ethan leaned forward, listening. "What happened to you?" he asked. Lyra's silver eyes shimmered with sadness. "My family was betrayed," she said. "One of our own sold secrets to our enemies, and they came in the night." She paused, her voice trembling as she remembered. "They burned our halls, captured us, and I was taken." Ethan felt a knot in his chest. He knew the weight of loneliness, but her loneliness was deeper, born from loss that could never be replaced. She was not just a girl who had been sold. She was the last spark of something greater, something powerful. Lyra lowered her head, her voice breaking. "They erased my memory, they tried to strip my power, but pieces remained." Her thin hand touched her chest. "Sometimes the light still answers me, but it is broken like me." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. He was not a hero, not a soldier, not a man with power. Yet here he was, sitting across from someone hunted, someone carrying a secret that could change everything. He wondered why fate had chosen him, a lonely man with nothing, to be the one to save her. "Why sell you so cheap?" Ethan asked at last, his voice cautious. "If you are who you say, wouldn't you be worth more than 3 coins? Lyra lifted her eyes to him, her silver gaze sharp. "That is the trick," she said quietly. "If they believe you are worthless, no one will protect you." Her lips trembled, but then she added, "And if someone does protect you, they will suffer for it." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Who is after you?" he asked, though deep inside he already knew. Before Lyra could answer, the ship's alarm beeped softly. Ethan rose quickly, moving to the control panel. On the screen, a red light blinked. Tracking signal detected. Someone was following them. Lyra's face turned pale, her glowing skin dimming even more. "They found me," she whispered. "They always find me." Ethan cursed under his breath. The station was far behind them, but it did not matter. Whoever hunted her was powerful, and they had ships faster than his. He tightened his grip on the controls, his jaw set. Lyra's voice shook. "You should let me go. Leave me, and they may spare you." Her words cut deep, but Ethan shook his head firmly. "I don't abandon people," he said, his voice steady. "Not you. Not now." Lyra looked at him, surprise in her shining eyes. She had expected him to be like the others, to throw her away once danger came. Instead, this human, with nothing but an old ship and a lonely heart, chose to stand with her. The alarm beeped louder, the red light flashing. Ethan pulled the ship into a sharp turn, diving into the shadows of a nearby asteroid field. The rocks were huge, spinning slowly in the void, dangerous to navigate but offering cover. Behind them, faint lights appeared. 2 ships, hunting, closing in. Lyra pressed her hands together, her body trembling. Her skin flickered with light again, but she shook her head. "I am too weak," she said. "I cannot protect us." Ethan looked back at her, his eyes fierce. "Then I will," he said simply. He pushed the ship deeper into the asteroid field, weaving between deadly rocks. The hunters followed, their weapons glowing. Lyra gripped the chair, fear in her eyes. But inside that fear, something else grew. A spark. No one had ever risked themselves for her. No one had ever chosen to stay. Perhaps this lonely human was not weak as he seemed, as the asteroids closed around them and the enemy ships drew near. Lyra whispered to herself, "My past is not gone, my power is not gone, and maybe my future is not gone either." And for the first time, she believed it. The asteroid field was a graveyard of stone and silence. Giant rocks turned slowly in the dark, their sharp edges glinting with cold starlight. Ethan's ship slid between them like a shadow, its engines humming low, its lights dimmed. Behind him, 2 hunter ships followed, sleek and sharp, glowing like predators in the void. Ethan's hands gripped the controls, sweat running down his brow. The old ship shuddered under his touch, not built for speed, not built for war. Each turn was a risk, each breath a gamble. But he knew if he flew straight, they would catch him, and Lyra would be gone. Lyra sat behind him, her silver eyes wide, her body trembling with fear. The faint glow of her skin flickered, lighting the cabin in pulses like a dying star. "Why are they after me?" Ethan asked through clenched teeth. Weaving between 2 massive stones, Lyra lowered her head, her voice small. "Because I carry something they cannot allow to live." The words chilled him, but there was no time to ask more. The hunters opened fire, red beams flashing through the darkness. The blasts slammed into asteroids, sending shards spinning through the void. One beam grazed the ship's hull, making the whole cabin rattle. Ethan cursed, throwing the ship into a dive. "Hold on!" he shouted, pulling hard on the controls. The ship scraped against a rock, sparks flying across the windows, but they slipped deeper into the maze of stone. The hunters followed, relentless, patient, waiting for Ethan to make one mistake. Lyra clutched the chair, her hands glowing faintly. Her lips moved as if whispering to herself, fighting with something inside. Finally, she cried out, "I can help, but I am afraid." Ethan glanced at her, his eyes hard but kind. "Fear keeps you alive," he said. "But don't let it chain you. If you can help, now's the time." Lyra's breath came fast. She closed her eyes, her hands rising, trembling in the dim light. At first nothing happened, only silence, only fear. Then slowly, light began to grow around her fingers, thin lines of silver weaving together like threads. Ethan watched in shock as the glow spread, filling the cabin with soft radiance. The old ship's dark walls reflected it, turning the space into something otherworldly. Lyra's voice was shaky but steady enough to whisper words in her ancient tongue. The light bent, shifting, wrapping around the ship. From the outside, the hunters saw the vessel vanish into shadows, hidden by a cloak of bending light. The hunters fired again, beams slicing through empty stone. Confused, they slowed, scanning, their sensors tricked. Inside, Ethan's eyes widened. You made us invisible," he said in awe. Lyra's face twisted with effort, sweat dripping down her pale skin. "Not for long," she whispered. "I am weak, but it will buy us time." Ethan pushed the ship deeper into the asteroid field. Weaving silently through the shadows, the hunters prowled, their lights sweeping, their weapons ready. But they could no longer see him. For a few moments, there was only silence, broken by Lyra's heavy breathing. Her hands shook, the glow flickering, her body fragile as glass. Finally, she collapsed against the chair, The light fading, the ship shimmered back into view, bare against the stars. "They will find us again," she whispered, her voice faint. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we'll fight," he said. The hunters spotted them again, engines roaring, weapons charging. Ethan's ship jolted as another blast struck the hull, shaking every bolt and plate. Warning lights flashed on the control panel, systems failing, oxygen lines straining. The old ship was dying, but Ethan's spirit was not. He pulled the vessel into a sharp dive toward a massive spinning asteroid. The hunters followed, thinking they had him trapped. But Ethan's eyes were sharp, calculating. He aimed for a narrow crack in the stone, barely wider than his ship. Lyra gasped. "We won't fit." Ethan's hands did not shake. "We'll fit," he said, and pushed the throttle forward. The ship shot into the crack, metal scraping, sparks flying. Behind them, one hunter tried to follow, but the rock was too tight. The vessel slammed into the stone, exploding in a burst of fire and light. The second hunter slowed, cautious, circling outside. Ethan's ship burst out the other side, engines sputtering but alive. Lyra's eyes shone wide, her lips parted in shock. "You are not like the others," she whispered. Ethan gave a faint smile, though his hands still shook. "No," he said softly. "I'm just human." But the chase was not over. The second hunter ship was still behind them, faster, stronger, armed with weapons Ethan could not outrun. Lyra looked at him, her eyes burning with a mix of fear and hope. "You cannot win alone," she whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. "Then don't let me be alone," he said. Something stirred in her heart, something buried deep under fear and pain. For the first time she felt the spark of what she once was. Her hands trembled, but light flickered again, stronger this time, brighter. As the hunter closed in, Lyra stood, her silver glow spreading. Through the cabin her voice rang with power, not broken this time but fierce. "They will not take me again," she said. Ethan turned the ship toward open space, his jaw set. Behind them, the hunter charged, weapons blazing. In front of them, darkness stretched endless, full of danger, full of promise. The chase had only just begun. The stars stretched endlessly before them, silent and cold. Ethan's ship drifted through the void, scarred from the chase, its engines weak but still alive. Inside, the cabin was quiet, broken only by the hum of failing systems and the faint breath of its two passengers. Lyra sat in the corner, her hands clasped tightly, her silver eyes dim. The glow of her skin had faded, leaving her pale and fragile. She stared at the floor as though afraid to meet Ethan's gaze. Ethan, tired but unbroken, leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. He had seen her power, seen the light she could command, but he had also seen her fear. She was more than a runaway, more than a stranger. She was someone who carried wounds deeper than scars. At last, Ethan spoke, his voice low. "You saved us," he said. Lyra shook her head quickly, her white hair falling across her face. "No," she whispered. "I failed. I could not hold it. I am weak." Ethan frowned, his tone firm. "You call that weak? You blinded 2 hunter ships and gave us a chance to live." His eyes softened and he leaned forward. "You are not weak, Lyra. You are just afraid, and you are not alone anymore." Her eyes lifted slowly, silver meeting human brown. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy but warm. She wanted to believe him, but years of chains, fear, and betrayal made belief a hard thing to hold. The ship rattled, pulling them from the moment. Ethan cursed under his breath, rising to check the controls. "Oxygen filters are failing," he muttered. "Food supply low too." He glanced at Lyra, then forced a tired smile. "We'll manage," he said, though his mind told him otherwise. The days that followed were quiet, filled with small routines. Ethan repaired what he could, tightening bolts, patching wires, keeping the ship alive one piece at a time. Lyra watched him work, sometimes offering a soft word, sometimes sitting in silence. Slowly, she began to move around the cabin more, her steps careful but growing stronger. One night, As the stars drifted outside, Ethan told her stories. He spoke of Earth, of the blue oceans, green forests, and skies that seemed endless. Lyra listened with wide eyes, her silver gaze glowing softly in the dim light. "No chains, no hunters," she whispered. "A world where light is free." Ethan nodded, his voice carrying both pride and sadness. "Yes, but it's far away. Maybe forever out of reach." Lyra tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "Do you miss it?" she asked. Ethan's chest tightened. Every day, he admitted, silence lingered, and then Lyra whispered, Maybe one day you can take me there." Her words surprised him, but deep inside something stirred. Hope, fragile but alive. He smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said, though he did not know if it was possible. As days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. Ethan taught her human words she did not know, showing her small tools and objects, laughing softly when she guessed wrong. Lyra, in turn, taught him small phrases of her forgotten language, the words flowing like music from her lips. Together, they filled the silence of space with something new. Companionship. But shadows never stayed away for long. Ethan noticed strange signals on the radar, faint but familiar. Hunters still searched, still followed, always one step behind. He did not tell Lyra at first, not wanting to break her fragile peace, but she already knew, her silver eyes sharp. "They will not stop," she said one night, her voice firm. "They will keep coming until they have me." Ethan clenched his fists, anger rising. "Then, they'll have to go through me first," he said. Lyra looked at him with surprise, then something softer. "No one has ever said that for me before," she whispered. The bond between them deepened, not only through danger, but through trust. Ethan shared his loneliness, the pain of wandering without purpose. Lyra shared her fear, the memories of betrayal, the shame of feeling powerless, and in those confessions they found strength. Two broken souls, but together, less broken. One evening, as Ethan repaired the ship's engines, Lyra sat beside him. Her hand glowed faintly as she touched a damaged wire. The metal sparked, then healed, as though the light itself had stitched it back together. Ethan stared, amazed. "You fixed it," he said. Lyra smiled faintly, the first real smile he had seen from her. "Maybe I am not so weak after all," she whispered. Ethan's heart lifted, his tired spirit warming at her words. "No, Lyra," he said softly. "You are stronger than you know." Outside, the stars continued their endless watch. The hunters were still out there, shadows in the dark. But inside that small ship, something new had been born. Not just survival, not just fear, but connection. And connection was stronger than chains, stronger than loneliness, stronger even than fear. As Lyra drifted to sleep, her silver glow soft against the cabin walls, Ethan whispered to himself, "She is not my burden, she is my reason." And though danger loomed, though the hunters drew closer, Ethan knew one thing with certainty. This bond was worth fighting for, worth dying for, and maybe, just maybe, it was worth living for too. The ship finally found rest on a small, quiet world, hidden in the folds of forgotten star maps. It was not grand, not rich, not filled with shining cities. It was a lonely planet with soft hills, wide forests, and skies painted with twin suns. But to Ethan and Lyra, it was safety. It was peace, even if only for a time. They stepped onto the soil, together, the ground warm under their boots, the air fresh with scents unknown to Ethan's human lungs. For the first time in many months, he breathed without fear of alarms, without fear of hunters on his tail. Lyra's silver eyes widened as she looked at the horizon, her skin glowing, faintly under the twin suns. "It feels free," she whispered, her voice trembling as though the word itself was something new on her tongue. They built a home not with riches but with their hands. A small shelter near a river, walls of stone and wood gathered from the forest. Ethan worked with strength and stubbornness, his hands rough, his body tired but alive. Lyra helped with her light, bending it to harden stone, to heal cuts, to bring warmth when the nights grew cold. Together they made something that belonged to them. It was not perfect, but it was theirs. In the evenings, when the suns dipped low and the stars filled the sky, they sat together by the river. Ethan told stories of Earth again, of oceans that stretched forever, of skies that rumbled with storms, of cities filled with people. Lyra listened, her head resting against his shoulder, her voice soft. "One day," she whispered, "you will show me this Earth." Ethan smiled faintly, though he knew the truth. That Earth was far and lost, maybe beyond their reach still, he whispered back. One day. Their bond deepened in quiet moments. When Ethan fixed broken tools, Lyra was there, her hands glowing faintly, her laughter gentle as she teased his clumsy work. When Lyra woke from nightmares, Ethan was there, holding her, whispering that she was safe now. Slowly, the broken pieces of their lives began to knit together, not whole, but enough. One night, under the stars, Ethan looked at her, his heart full in a way it had not been in years. "Lyra," he said, his voice rough, "I want more than to just survive with you." Lyra's silver eyes shone, her lips parting in surprise. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Ethan took her hand gently, his calloused fingers wrapping around her delicate ones. "I mean, I want a life with you, not just as the man who saved you, but as the man who stands beside you." He paused, his voice softer. "Will you marry me?" Lyra froze, the weight of his words sinking deep. Marriage was not a word of her people, but she understood it. Binding two souls, not with chains, but with choice. Tears shimmered in her eyes, her voice breaking as she whispered, "No one has ever chosen me before." Then she smiled, soft and real. "Yes, Ethan, I will." Their ceremony was small, without priests, without crowds, without gold or jewels. It was only them under the stars, with the river whispering nearby. Ethan placed a simple ring he had carved from stone on her finger. Lyra touched his chest, with glowing hands whispering old words from her people, words of light and bond. And in that moment they were not human and alien, not slave and rescuer. They were husband and wife. Life changed after that. They worked not just to survive, but to build a family. Lyra planted seeds, strange plants that grew quickly under her light, their fruits feeding them for many days. Ethan hunted small creatures in the forests, his human skills keeping them alive. Together they laughed more, shared more, dreamed more. The silence of the universe no longer felt empty, for their voices filled it. Months passed, and their home grew warmer, fuller. Lyra's glow returned brighter, with each day no longer flickering, no longer weak. Ethan grew stronger too, not from battle but from love, from the weight of responsibility he now carried gladly. Then came the day Lyra placed his hand against her stomach, her silver eyes glowing brighter than ever. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking with wonder, "we are not alone anymore." His eyes widened, his heart racing. "You mean—" She nodded, tears shining like stars. "Yes, Ethan, a child." For a long moment he was silent, his breath caught in his chest. Then he pulled her close, his arms strong, his voice shaking. "A family," he whispered. "We will have a family." Their joy filled the small home, spilling into the nights. Ethan imagined teaching his child the stories of Earth. Lyra imagined their child glowing with the light of her people and the spirit of his. Together they dreamed of a future, not just of survival, but of life. But shadows never slept. Far above the quiet planet, among the stars, hunters still searched. They whispered of the girl who escaped, of the human who dared to take her. They tracked signals, followed trails, waiting for the day they would find her again. And though Ethan and Lyra did not yet know it, their marriage and new life was not the end. It was only the calm before the storm. The hunters would return, stronger and fiercer. But this time, Ethan would not be fighting alone. He would be fighting for his wife, for his child, for the family he had built from nothing, and nothing in the universe was stronger than that. The quiet planet had given Ethan and Lyra peace for many months. Their small home stood strong beside the river, their days filled with work, laughter, and dreams. Lyra's glow was brighter than ever, her child growing inside her. Ethan felt joy he had never known, his loneliness healed by love. But peace in the universe never lasted long. It began with shadows in the sky. One evening, as the twin suns sank and the stars awakened, Ethan noticed the first dark shapes above the horizon, ships, sharp and silver, moving like wolves hunting prey. The hunters had found them. Lyra stood at the door of their home, her silver eyes wide, her hands clutching her stomach. "They are here," she whispered, fear trembling in her voice. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hands steady even as his heart raced. "They won't take you," he said firmly. "Not now, not ever." The hunters descended, their ships landing in the valley, engines roaring. Dozens of them emerged, armored and armed, their voices cold, their movements precise. At their center stood a tall figure, cloaked in black, his eyes glowing with cruel fire. He raised his voice sharp as a blade. "Return the girl, human, or be destroyed." Ethan stepped forward, his body between Lyra and the hunters. His voice was calm, but it carried across the valley. "She is not yours," he said. "She is my wife, and this is our home." The hunters laughed, their cruel voices echoing. "You are only human," the leader sneered. "You cannot stand against us." But Ethan did not move. He had no army, no weapons beyond his old rifle, no ships to escape. Yet inside him burned something stronger than any weapon, the will to protect his family. Lyra's hand touched his arm, her voice soft. "They are too many," she whispered. "You cannot win." Ethan turned to her, his eyes fierce. "Maybe I can't," he said, "but we can." Lyra's silver eyes widened, tears shining. For the first time, she believed in that word. We, together, not alone, not broken, but whole. The hunters advanced, their weapons raised. Ethan lifted his rifle steady and unshaken. But even as he fired, he knew bullets would not be enough. The hunters were too strong, too many. Then Lyra stepped forward, her hands glowing brighter than ever, her body blazing with light. Her power, once broken, now awakened by love, by life growing inside her. The valley exploded with silver radiance. Blades of light cut through the air, bending, twisting, shielding Ethan from the hunter's fire. Their weapons sparked uselessly against the barrier she created. The leader snarled, forcing his men forward. But Ethan moved with her, fighting not as a soldier, but as a human who refused to surrender. He used his mind, not just his weapon. He drew the hunters into narrow paths, used rocks for cover, used traps he had built while hunting. Where their strength was brute, his was clever. Where they followed orders, he followed instinct. Together, human will and alien light stood as one. One by one, the hunters fell back, blinded by Lyra's radiance, struck by Ethan's traps and fire. The leader roared in anger, his cloak burning under the silver glow. He raised his blade, charging straight for Lyra. Ethan leapt between them, blocking the strike, the force throwing him to the ground. Pain shot through him, but he did not let go of his rifle. He fired once, twice, his shot striking true. The leader stumbled, his blade falling, his fire dimming. Lyra's light flared, wrapping around the man like chains of brightness. With a cry, she cast him back into the valley, defeated, broken. The hunters froze, their leader fallen, their weapons powerless against the union of human courage and alien light. One by one, they dropped their arms, retreating to their ships. The valley grew quiet again, the smoke of battle drifting away with the wind. Ethan lay on the ground, breathing hard, his body bruised but alive. Lyra knelt beside him, tears glowing on her cheeks, her hands healing his wounds with soft light. "You fought for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan's lips curved into a tired smile. "No," he said, softly. "I fought for us." She pressed her forehead to his, her voice trembling. "Humans," she whispered. "You are not weak as they believe. You are stronger than any of them, not because of power, but because of love. Above them, the stars shone bright. The hunters were gone. Their home stood safe, their bond unbroken. Lyra rested her hand on her stomach, her silver glow wrapping both of them in warmth. Together they had won not only freedom, but a future. Ethan closed his eyes, holding her close. He was once a lonely man who spent 3 coins in a market, but that choice had given him more than he could ever dream. A wife, a family, and a reason to live among the stars. And so the universe would remember not the hunters, not the fallen leader, but the human who stood unbroken. For in the end, it was not alien strength or alien power that won. It was the spirit of a man, the bond of love, and the truth that humans are special,